mesmerize you all with my fan in the background. So
I did notice that.
Okay, what's that?
Excellent. It's 7:01, July 27th. I'd call the school committee meeting to order. We get the script for remotely conducted meetings. As a preliminary matter, this is Paul Brennan, chair of the school committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Tufts.
Aye.
Nate Jerome.
Aye.
Bruce Edwards.
aye.
Kristen Favorite-Clark.
Close. Pfeiffer.
Close.
Aye.
We'll keep trying.
We'll work on it.
And then with staff, we've got Superintendent Ted Friend
Present.
and the business administrator, Nancy Koninsky.
Hi.
And we have special guest Laura,
After Jeannie.
Cacchini.
Hi.
Pfeiffer, right? Hi. So good evening. This open meeting of the Sutton School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's orders suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This meeting will feature public forum right at the beginning, and then we will, with all the adventures, be turning off or muting folks who want to join and listen in after the open forum, unless you're part of the specific agenda. The school committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app. This meeting is being recorded. Take care not to share your screen or your computer. Please put yourself on mute when you're not speaking. All of the materials were presented and available on the district's website. Meeting ground rules. We are now turning to the first item of the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of business. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of members. We got a new list. It's ready to go. A line card. I'll go down the line of members asking everybody to speak and ask questions, and then we'll go around if there are more questions or more discussion. Please wait until the chair yields the floor. If members wish to engage in a conversation with others, please do so through the chair. Either use the click wave your hand or wave your hand like that, and we'll work through. This is getting worse and worse every time I read it, so you can complain on that. First item on the agenda is the public forum. If there was somebody by phone now who had questions or comments. Hearing none, I'm going to go to the next item on the agenda, the consent agenda. This is minutes of July 13, as well as the build schedules of June 30, July 13, and July 16. I'd look for a motion. Pete, you're going to get it. You're at the top of the list right now. I'm looking for a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second.
Doubles. Questions or comments, Pete?
No, thank you.
And Bruce?
Yes, kind of a minor issue. While I like Mike Whittier, I don't think that the president of the teachers union is an administrator, and I'd like to see that removed and added as a guest.
I'm sure, is that, where are we doing that?
In the minutes.
Oh, right, sorry, got it. Any questions, concerns on that? That's going to be friendly amendment. Di, if you can catch that. Others? Kristen?
I sent a few things to Nancy. I guess I was just looking for clarification because there was there were quite a few bills that were presented for alarm testing, fire services. Can you delineate all of those for me? Who's doing what do we get from them?
Yep.
And then,
I'm gonna go right down the list from what you sent me.
okay, perfect.
Okay. So one of the questions you had was on the July 13th warrant for Unibank for $71.25.
Yes.
So that was bus payments, the fees for the bus payments for April, May, and June.
Oh, but isn't that a charge to us for parents paying for fees online, or is
Yeah,
that
we paid those fees. That was the payment for those fees for the bus payments.
so how far ahead if we were closed, how far ahead did parents pay? Were they paying in April, May, and June?
For next year,
Oh, for
for
next year.
FY21.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
collect the year ahead. Yeah.
I forgot about that. Okay, sorry.
And then you asked about on the July 13th warrant, there were 3 charges for Watermark.
Yes.
So one was $306.30. That was for replacement of a bulb for a lamp module in the sewer treatment plant.
Okay.
Then there was another one for $1,636.91. And that was for replacement of parts for issues with the programming logic panel and replacements of parts for that.
Okay.
And then there was one for $2,725.35. That there was a leak in the 4-inch main repair, which is the switch pumps, and they were not working properly. So that was repair for that.
Okay. All right.
And then you had 2 more,
Yes.
and it was for Lemelin for $520.07 on the July 13th warrant.
Yes.
And that was a fee for troubleshooting the field tank in the high school. When we filled this, we topped the tank off at the end of the school year on June 30th for oil. And the sensor for the...
Is that the sensor that's on the building?
Yes, yes,
That has gone off multiple times while I've been walking the dogs.
yes. Yep,
Okay.
and that's what it was, and that was repaired.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what that was. And there's 2 more on July 13th, also for Norel. There
Yeah.
was 2 charges for $435 and $835. So when they were doing preventative maintenance, the battery and a horn strobe needed replacement. Several batteries and several.
So we did that.
horn strobes.
All right. And then for the alarm testing, we had multiple invoices for that.
Through Colby.
No, actually through Norel on 713 on pages 4 and 5.
Yeah, that was all the batteries and the horn strobe replacements for all
Okay.
schools. There were several of them.
So then we did some troubleshooting again on the 716. Bill
Are you on
schedule?
Colby or are you still on Norel?
No, still on Norel.
Let me look.
So it looked like it said we did some troubleshooting. So I'm just
So
wondering,
it's the same thing. If
Okay.
it says troubleshooting. But let me confirm. Let me just take a quick check.
okay.
Yeah, this is the same thing.
Okay, and all those alarms are related to which system? So is that our fire system? Is it the security system?
I gotta get back to you.
Norel does that fire alarm system.
Okay. So then what does Colby do if they also build for fire service?
Colby is our service contractor for the sprinkler system.
Solely for sprinklers?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they were the bill from Colby for $3,000 that you questioned on June 16th was
Yes.
service agreement for the whole year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks. Nate, questions?
Nope, my Hornstrobe question was answered. I'm good.
Excellent. Excellent. So we have a motion. We have the friendly amendment. I don't know whether it's going to be a short meeting or not. Roll
right.
call vote. Pete. Pete's on mute, and what he said
Tough
was
side,
aye.
tough side, tough side.
Bruce,
Edwards, aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
and Nate.
Jerome, I.
And Brennan, I carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is to approve a private school. This is the Country Montessori. You see now, what was it, 5-6 minutes ago? You pronounced your last name for me, Laura, and it's already come and gone. I'm sorry about that. We have we had quite a presentation, and then there were some questions in the last meeting. There were some questions. There was some concern around, can we get some input from the principals of the elementary school and the Early Learning Center? Did you all receive? There was a letter sent to us in that space. What I think I'll do in the interest of time is, I don't think we need to go through. If folks want to see, they can go back to the prior meeting to see a presentation, and the documentation is still there. I'm going to go first to look for a motion and then go to questions, and we can talk through in that space. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the Country Montessori.
So moved.
Second,
Pete, questions?
I do not.
Bruce,
I have none.
Kristen,
I have none.
Nate,
All set, thank you.
you're wondering, does Paul have a? I have none. I think it's great. It's good to see it put together like that, and I think the endorsement of the administration you got says worlds. So that sounds great. So no questions. We'll take a vote. We'll go around one more time. Pete,
Tough side.
Bruce,
I abstain.
Kristen,
Clark, aye.
Nate,
Jerome, I.
and Brennan, I carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Good luck.
Good luck.
It's a great year to start. Next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update. I sent to folks a document from the MASC, which I thought was very timely. I don't know whether you saw it, had a chance to read, but sort of the heart of it was talking towards, in crazy times like this, what's the responsibility of the committee? The whole sort of reminder around budgetary and policy. And then in crazy times like this, with lots of policies changing, what's the right balance? So I think it's a good introduction to, there are for sure going to be policies that we will need to modify and vote and approve and support. It's not on the agenda tonight to approve, but what I'd like to do is let Ted do most of the talking, right? But present where we're at, try to pull out as many questions as we can tonight, so that on the policies we do have to approve, say for example, the calendar and when classes start, we can put that on for a vote and further discussion in the next meeting. So Ted, can you give us an update?
I can. So thank you, Paul. So let me take you through some of the money issues first. We're working on a $297,000 state entitlement grant. This is a grant for COVID-19 related expenses. So just highlight some of the first thoughts on how we plan to spend the money. First of all, it'll cover some of the supplies and materials we'll need to open our building for COVID related expenses. We'll be able to have, for the fall, additional guidance or adjustment counselor help. We're going to hire the equivalent of 1 additional school nurse, and we're going to have to hire some additional custodial staff just to keep the buildings as clean as humanly possible. We're also looking to purchase some additional Chromebooks and some other supplies to directly serve our students. The grant must be spent by December 31st, which is interesting. So I still need a little clarification whether we can spend the money December 31st and still carry personnel into the next year or not. So we'll get that, but that's our thinking at this time. We are going to purchase laptops for all STA educators through the town's capital fund and through the town's COVID-19 federal funding. The town received $842,000. So the first phase, we're going to get laptops for all teachers so that they can do the remote learning with a modern updated computer, and everybody has the same computer. So our computer department can manage and image all of those machines at the same time. We're also going to provide all of our instructional assistants that do direct service with students a Chromebook so that they can have the appropriate equipment. We're still waiting on Chapter 70 funding. The state is still delayed announcing what that is. And that certainly determines ultimately what our funding source is from the state. Busing will look very different next year. There should be some significant savings in our budget for busing next year. Mike Long will be working with Ron from AA to update our contract to address how the school year will look next year. As I said, at this point in time, we're leaning toward a hybrid model. And so at any one time, only half the number of students will be coming into the building. And in our initial survey, 60 to 65% of parents planned on driving their students into school. So with that said, we should be able to eliminate a number of bus routes next year and still keep our kids socially distanced on the bus. So that's some good news. Also on the bus front, our final payout from last year, we actually settled with AA for only 50%, not 56% as was reported before. And the total payout is actually lower than we initially stated. I think we said before it was going to be $128,000. It came at only $109,000. So that savings would be reflected in our school choice revolving line. So thank you to all of you for pushing back. We were there were two districts that pushed back, and so that went very well. And what also worked out well is Mike Long worked to do that settlement, so he has a good relationship with the owner of AA Transportation. So that was good news. Going into next year, we have a minimum of $1.1 million in our school choice revolving account. We anticipate it being a little bit larger than that once the final bills are paid. So with all of that said, I would like to go and hire the second grade teacher that we budgeted for, and hire the high school English teacher that we budgeted for, and to also make Ann Corin the official assistant principal / dean of students now, because we need all those positions in place to make our final plans, our final schedules. And I think with the savings in transportation and other savings that we'll have in the budget naturally with doing a hybrid model, I think we'll be in fine shape financially, even if there's a small cut in Chapter 70. So I wanted to put that out there now because it's going to be August 1st, and we need to get people in places and positions so we can start planning the schedule. So that's the end of the kind of the budget part of what I was going to talk about. So I thought I'd take some questions at this point about the grants or any of the budget issues that I just mentioned.
So Pete?
I'm good. I want to just listen. Thank you.
Bruce?
Ted, what did we get for incoming school choice? How many kids coming in?
Diane, whoa, what happened? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, somehow the screen went to Zoom.
Oh, hi. I believe we have 7. 3 of them declined. I believe we have 7 incoming school choice.
Thank you, Di.
Thank you. And the other question I had, you mentioned hiring additional custodial staff. Listening into the high school call prior to this one, again, understanding the schedule is not chosen yet, but one of the options was a 2 days on, Monday, Tuesday, on a Wednesday, no one in school, cleaning day, Thursday, Friday, the other half of the kids come in. I assume that at least for the first half of the year, this state entitlement grant can be used. You mentioned additional custodial staff, but either additional staff or overtime for those folks to come in on Saturday to clean the school, similar to the Wednesday after the first set of kids. Is that what you're envisioning?
Yes. So what I'm envisioning is our regular custodians have a regular schedule of cleaning. And so I envision the potentially 2 part-time positions to come in, and all their job is to do that cleaning system that we've purchased in every classroom and every space in the building. And then we could also use them on weekends as well. So that's the plan.
And Kristen?
Ted, the money you were just talking about, the 297, is that the relief fund grant that you're talking about?
This was the grant that I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, receiving $225 per pupil.
Okay.
So that's coming from the state.
Okay, because according to the state release on the 20th, it's only good for expenses through December 30th, not the 31st.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Other than that, I got tons of other questions, but I think that's for another place.
Okay.
And
How's
Nate?
that?
No current questions on the budget side.
So I think that the budget right now that we've approved has all of the positions you've described. You wouldn't be working
No, that's not
past.
correct.
That these are all positions we have in the current approved budget, but that we have, I think, given you direction to hold off on that. Technically speaking, I don't think there's a motion in here because we did not move to change the budget, and you'd be working within the budget. I for one, really appreciate the information and us all sort of working through that. But I think it's really notify that generally I would expect that you're holding fast on the budget wherever possible and working through us this year. But other than that, I don't think there's a motion, and I didn't hear any complaints. So keep going with the budget.
Thank you. Okay, so right now, each principal had voluntary staff meetings to kind of update them where our different study groups are looking at and the direction we plan on going in the fall open school. So that's taken place. We had our first parent meeting with high school staff. By the way, we bought the Zoom where we can have as many as 500 parents on any call so that we can have regular meetings and invite entire schools. And so I think you're right, Bruce. In that meeting, we got an indication that people have varying positions on how we open schools. I will say that my number one criteria that we start with is safety, the safety of our students and our staff and the entire Sutton community. And we're going to look at the Department of Public Health guidance. And from there, we will look to make the best possible decision for opening schools in the fall. At this time, with all the different study groups, I think we all agree that to start the school year with a hybrid model would be our best approach. And the nice part about doing a hybrid model is you can go either way. So if it turns out that we have very low incidence of the virus, and we're able to manage 12 kids in a classroom very easily, and it's determined that, you know what, I think we can go 4 days a week with all kids, then we can move into that direction. But if we find that by bringing everybody back, there was an uptick in coronavirus cases, we can go back. The other advantage is it gets all of our students and all of our staff ready to go to remote learning. So that if we have to go to remote learning, we can flip the switch. All of our kids will know how to access the computers, which was a big problem. Excuse me. You know, I got to remember to write a note to myself. We're probably going to also have to have some training for parents as well, you know, especially the younger parents, to help them support their kids with remote learning. So right now, we haven't committed to any specific plan, but the general feeling is that having half the kids come in 2 days a week, having the other half of the students come in 2 days a week, and having Wednesday be a remote for all students, and then the first half of the day, all staff come in and they work collaboratively to assess how we're doing with the overall instruction, so we can tinker and tweak what we're doing and make changes as we go along, because we've never done this before. The other part of that is all staff leave the building by 11 o'clock in the morning. and that gives our custodians that entire time to do additional cleaning of the facility. So that's kind of where we are at this moment in time. Now, it could change based on more guidance that comes out, but that's our thinking. Our initial plan is due this Friday. That's basically just kind of outline what I just explained to everybody, our initial thoughts on where we think we're going. And our final plan is due on August 10th. So again, then on August 10th, before then, we're going to send out a bus survey this coming week so that we identify how many parents plan on taking the bus so that we can start building our bus routes and having more robust conversations with the bus company on what we look like we're going to need for busing next year. After the August 10th, on August 10th, we plan on sending out a survey to all parents explaining exactly what the plan is, and then having parents have to make a choice that week. Are you going to go full remote? Are you going to avail yourself to the hybrid model for instruction? And yes, parents can go back and forth if they choose to. Say they made a decision, they get to October 1 and they thought, you know, we'd rather give up remote and go back into the classroom. They can do that, but we want to minimize that as much as humanly possible. On another note, the MIAA, the board that governs sports, came out, and there are articles in the paper. They're recommending starting sports 3 weeks into the school year in September. Now, that's their recommendation. That doesn't mean that we're going to have sports in the fall. So I think it gave parents a false sense of hope and optimism that we're going to have sports this fall. I find it hard to believe that when you see all the colleges and universities canceling fall sports and the guidance from the Department of Public Health, that they think we're going to be able to have contact sports in the fall. Now, I love sports. I live for sports. I was a swimming coach for 20 years. I want sports, and I understand the value of sports. But it seems kind of odd that they would put out this recommendation when we're tying ourselves in knots trying to open the school for half the students at any one time. So I just want to make that clear that no decision has been made yet. And I think at this point, I would find it hard to believe that we'll have fall sports, but I'll keep you posted.
Can we, because there's so much going, I wonder if we can just go around real quick, grab questions on everything you've done there. This is Pete.
And I like going first.
Well, it only happens once every 4 meetings. So.
No, I appreciate all the hard work, Ted. I know this is very difficult from the comments I saw in the meeting before. You know, you're not going to be able to please everybody all the time. I just think people have to be patient. There's a lot of direction coming from the state. Is part of the reason why they're looking for a plan from you so early is so the state can poach all the great ideas that come from the schools that are innovative and coming up with some great ideas.
I'm not sure what their rationale was. I think originally they wanted as many school districts as possible to open with all students coming back, lowering the threshold to 3 feet, and the pushback was universal. I don't know of, and there are a couple districts holding out in the Valley. I'm not sure any district is still holding out for the full everybody coming back. And I don't think they'll have time to pick apart these plans. I think with submitting these plans, they'll have them on file. And I would say they're so tied up and busy that they'll sit in a folder somewhere unless something goes wrong.
Bruce, questions?
Surprisingly, I have none.
Kristen, you can make up for him?
I think that's a whole meeting in and of itself.
It is.
I guess I think the whole thing, yes, you've got parents who are going to be lovers or haters of what we've got. But the bottom line and most important thing here is that we're following recommendations of the CDC and the DPH. You can go by science. Science is what's going to get you through. So, I mean, ultimately, that is the best way to do things. So I hope people pay attention to that and if they have questions or concerns, go to the CDC, go to the DPH. They've got great recommendations on getting back to school and what you can do and what you could do to get ready. So
I
that's
will
just,
say our committees have been very, very thoughtful. I meet with teachers on a regular basis. They ask me tons of questions, and we are seeking opinions from everybody. I sat on the high school student meeting today, and they were great. You know, what happens with AP? And, you know, there were a number of questions that I didn't think of, and nor did Mr. McCarthy. So they wrote those down, and they're going to add that to their planning process.
right, just as are things like our lab sciences. How do you do a lab science? How are you going to work that through?
Well, you know, if I look at the numbers and we do it, our class sizes are going to be very small when the kid's there. So the kids are going to get a lot of attention. And so I think you could do lab sciences with the numbers that'll be there. They just won't be able to work in groups.
Okay.
And Nate?
In this question, I kind of ask, I even hate that I ask it, but I've noticed this with my wife, my family, as they participate in things. I've noticed for a lot of occasions, we have to sign waivers that, you know, basically say, yes, I recognize that putting myself in this scenario increases my chances of COVID. Do we have any legal sort of waiver approach that we're considering?
I haven't seen anything yet. I know that this is being talked about. It's something that I'll work with our attorney, Mike Long, on. But I have not seen anything specific on waivers at this point, but that is certainly something we're going to look at.
Okay. Thanks.
The comment around the staff collaboration, I think is great to hear, and I agree. I think that's finding a way in the schedule where we get more time for teachers to sort of pause and say, did that work? How do we shift on the fly is going to be important. So that's very good to hear. I did hear you say, and I got lost somewhere, all of the teachers out of the building by 11. If you're doing 2 days on, when would the students be leaving the building?
On Wednesday, students will not come into the building at all.
I'm sorry, it was Wednesday that all the teachers were out by 11, not the other days. Yeah, that makes more sense. I thought, boy, if you leave the kids in the building without teachers, that's sort of like, you know, remote learning. So if you do end up with having to sort out athletics and things sort of go as they're planning, is that any kind of a vote or policy that we would have to change?
I would say that we're going to have, if the state goes ahead with that plan, I think this committee, the Blackstone Valley superintendents, we're going to have to make some decisions. I asked, and they asked the question of the commissioner at the recent meeting with the Mass Association of School Superintendents, that they've requested that the commissioner make a decision and not leave it up to individual superintendents to decide whether you're going to have sports or not. So it's my hope that that won't fall in our lap. But if it does, it just flies in the face of everything we're talking about. We're talking about sports that have direct contact with other students. We're doing everything in our power not to cross-contaminate groups of kids and staff. Yet if we have sports, we're cross-contaminating communities and students. So I would say, yes, you would need to vote having fall sports if the commissioner doesn't step in.
And I'm comfortable with the logic and line of reasoning and having that conversation. What I didn't know was it's really just sort of procedurally, where will we go when we get there? So excellent. That's one we can talk about. Sorry, we're close. You mentioned the students who have the opportunity that we would allow. If somebody said, I'm going to start trying doing the hybrid and then move to remote or vice versa, how will you coordinate where they stand in the curriculum? If you're doing remote, is it still the intention that you would have sort of the same teachers and expected to be going in the same pace?
So I think it's going to vary by school. In my thinking, and the best thinking right now, is that in the lower grades, preschool or K through 5, if we have 12 to 15% of families that opt to fully remote their students, that we would assign one teacher to every grade, or possibly in some cases, one teacher to 2 grades, depending on the number of students. And so they would kind of follow the same curriculum as the other teachers are doing. Middle school and the high school, we're looking at what the state buys for a platform for remote learning, and that would cause a little bit more confusion to go from a state platform of remote learning to putting a schedule together for teachers. So how do you marry up AP biology if it doesn't work in the high school model? So that'll be more complicated.
Great. Pete, you're not raising your hand, but I'm going to go right down to the list.
Nope, I'm okay.
Bruce.
So Ted, on the high school call, Ted McCarthy talked about the state remote learning. Is this something that we're going to have to pay for? Or is this fully funded by the state for those kids who opt in for remote learning versus attending the school in person?
We would have to pay for it. It would be a shared cost with the other communities that buy into it. And we do not know what and we don't know what the cost is. We don't know what the vendor is, and they haven't picked the vendor yet. And it'll be August 1st on Saturday. So as he said, we're looking to do that, but if the platform is not a great platform, then we're going to have to reconsider other options.
So it's not required for, let me rephrase the question. Is it required for kids or school districts who kids opt in for remote learning? Or is this an option for these kids to use the state platform versus the district to provide the remote learning source?
We're going to do one or the other. We'd either do it internally ourselves. Families have an option to do full remote. And so I think the easiest thing for secondary ed would be to buy into this platform if it's cost effective and it hits our needs. If that doesn't work, then we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Is it something we can do internally, or is there another product out there that would suit our needs and provide the learning for our students? So that's a big question mark that we still have to resolve before school starts.
Well, we know how this is going to end up. The supposed wealthy districts are going to fund it for the districts that get all the state money, and that's not going to end well for us.
Well, I hope not. You're right, though. I mean, if they do it based on the wealth-based formula, you're 100% correct. We would be paying the lion's share as wealthy communities.
Kristen.
So why can't we, which I don't know how easy or hard this is, why can't we broadcast the lessons in real time?
Well, there would, we've talked about that. We've talked about it. We've talked about how do you do that? Is there software, or can we put cameras in the rooms? And we'd have to make a huge investment into cameras and technology. And then you'd also have to have someone in there actually videotaping, because the teacher's going to be teaching. So, if it comes back and that platform's terrible, we may look at ideas like that. Certainly for the kids, the remote portion of their lessons teachers will be making videos and adding them into their lessons when the students are doing remote. I think it's going to be too much to ask our teachers to teach their regular curriculum, and the high school actually teach an extra course each semester, manage the remote kids that they have that aren't in the class in front of them, and then possibly manage the other students that offer remote. I think that's just too much to ask of our teachers in this situation.
So what if we flipped back and forth between, as far as kids in school? So kids in school Monday, Tuesday are now remote Thursday, Friday, and vice versa. So
That's what we are doing.
Okay, all right. So then, but this would allow them to continue with their cohort as a whole, because when you start putting them into smaller groups, I don't know.
I'm only talking about the students that opt to do 100% remote learning.
Right.
That's what I'm
But-
talking about.
And that's why I think, I mean, the active learning is going to be the best part for them. So if there was a way where you've got a motion trained camera that actually, which are out there, to track the person as they're moving, and it becomes a more interactive class. I mean, that would ultimately be something spectacular. And the bottom line is, if we're experiencing this pandemic now, are we not going to experience something later where we could go to something like that? And I just think it's so much, it's better than Zoom classrooms and a lot of the static learning, because it gets so far away from all of the interactive learning that we were talking about before.
I don't disagree that, and I think this year will give us the opportunity to work on that, but to try to keep all these pieces together and keep it as somewhat simple, I think you just have to set up a separate platform for those kids. Just monitoring them, keeping track of what they're doing, and then teachers keeping track of their other students. But I think after this year of going through it and teachers start videotaping themselves, I know the second grade teachers plan on doing just exactly that. They're going to videotape lessons, and then the students that aren't in front of them, they're going to share those videotape lessons. So each teacher will do a lesson, and so they're spreading out the effort, and they're going to be providing the students that are in front of them.
So then there's a lag time. So then if you're teaching one thing on Monday, and all right, just for instance, with the high school, you've got kids on the Monday, Tuesday class. So there's a lag time now because you've got to record that and then get that out to the other students.
So again, I'm just talking about the ones that they have in front of them. So the kids that are going for 2 days,
Yep.
then the teachers will be preparing virtual lessons, and the curriculum is going to continue to go forward with those kids, the regular curriculum.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I'm following you, because I'm just,
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of double work, extra work. Because if you could have that interactive classroom from the start. Do you see what I'm
I
saying?
see what you said. Yeah, now I see. So instead of, when the child's not there, they're just zooming into the classroom is what you're saying.
Right.
And they're
Right.
just watching and zooming. And I
Yeah.
think maybe down the road, that's something that it'll look like. But right now, we do not have the technology in place, nor the staffing to pull that off for September. But I think down the road, that's a distinct possibility. And I would imagine there'll be a few teachers that have the equipment in their room and on their own that will probably do some of that as well.
So we'd pilot something then. We'd have.
I would say, based on the staff and some of the people that I know that teach in our district, they will be doing things like that in the fall.
Okay.
Nate?
All right.
Yeah, just quick. Is the line of thinking, do you know if you're Monday, Tuesday one week, are you Wednesday, Thursday another, or is it you're going to be Monday, Tuesday for a trimester or something?
So this is a little bit of a muddy area for us, because the Early Learning Center is very concerned that with such young children, if they do a Monday, Tuesday, and then they don't see those students for another 5 days, that disjointed period of time is going to have a significant educational impact. However, Department of Public Health and Cheryl Rowinski from town, she recommends that from a safety standpoint and a cleanliness standpoint and the transmittable virus of COVID-19, it's better to have cohorts come 2 days in a row, then you clean the building, and then the next group comes in. She feels that's the best option. We haven't finalized exactly the path we're going down, but we're leaning heavily toward a Monday, Tuesday cohort and a Thursday, Friday cohort at this time.
Well, and I guess the question that I had, it kind of lends to that. You get the 5 days in between, and we often discuss about time on learning. And if you were to have the kids be, 1 week there, Thursday, Friday, then Monday, Tuesday, but then they wouldn't be back for an extended amount of time, but they would almost get 4 days somewhat consecutive, and then a longer period off. Any way you slice it, it's not great, but
It's funny. Originally, the high school was looking at going down that path in the middle school, and then when they got together with the teachers and they thought through all the different options, they went back to a standard schedule. We also looked at, we have more Mondays off than normal,
Mhm.
but it would just be 2 Mondays in the fall. And so we just kind of want to standardize it. But yeah, that was an option that we went through. And, we have a lot of thoughtful people looking at this. And I just think of Dan Schweitzer. Dan Schweitzer is he's a pretty smart guy. And, he's well-read in this area. And the thing that he pointed out, which makes a lot of sense, the hybrid gives us the best of both worlds. It allows us to go in both different directions, depending on how the virus goes. And it gives us a month to really prepare kids if we have to go full remote.
Mhm.
But, I listen to him, and he's real nervous. He's a young guy. He's got 2 kids at home, and he's concerned. We've also looked at what his role is in teaching physical education. We're going to be housing our specialty teachers in one grade for 6-week chunks of time. And so 5th grade, if it starts in 5th grade, our 5th grade students will have physical education 5 days a week in the fall, just to keep from cross-contamination. But Dan's just one example of the eyes and ears looking at this problem and how to best meet the challenge.
Thank you.
Great, we kind of cut you in a thirds, or you have other notes, Ted?
I do. Just a couple of final points. The state is waiving the original rule is that you can teach 20% of your discipline. So if you're teaching middle and high school, you could teach one class in another subject area. They've now reduced that to 50% in your area. So it gives us much more flexibility with how we use our personnel going forward, which is very important. The state did also come out with, they are reducing the school year for students to 170 days, giving school districts an additional 10 days to prepare to bring students back to school. So at our next meeting, I will be bringing forward a calendar for the committee. I think our thinking right now, in consultation with the administration, with the unions, I think we still want to stick with the Thursday, Friday, and then the 4 days before Labor Day. And then I think we want to start school, and this is obviously your call, then let's start school after Labor Day. Now, if we went to 170 and we wanted to extend it another week, we could. But my feeling is we need to get students back into the building, but we also need to give staff plenty of time to make sure we're ready to roll when the students enter our building. So that was a change. And I think the biggest thing is people have to be flexible because there are changes every single day. I mean, I'm on the Zoom call with the parents and up pops this change. There were rumors to it, but I think we can expect that. They also changed the requirement of time on learning, which is kind of, I think, going to be a moot point anyway, because so much of the learning is going to be remote, and how do you calculate remote learning? So that was all I had at this point in time.
Great, Pete?
Just so, do I understand correctly that the entire school district, we're going to be splitting up in the hybrid training? Is there a plan to work with different families? If you got a kid in high school and a kid in the middle school and a kid in the elementary school, to make sure those kids are all in the same program?
So the first step is we'll probably use the alphabet, find out where schools lie, the 50-50 mark. Then the next step is to look at siblings so that all siblings are on the same schedule as the other siblings. And I'm hoping that, and there might be some other rare cases, but that's basically our plan moving forward.
And Bruce?
Ted, I know the 170 days school day, 170 days is fresh and just came out late this afternoon. Was there any more guidance with that? Is that intended to delay the start of school, or is that allow a district to start as originally planned and perhaps build in a depending on how this pandemic, how long this pandemic lasts and how it moves going forward, to build in either a longer break, whether we had talked previously about the full week at Thanksgiving or a longer break at Christmas if necessary. Is that the purpose of the 170 days, or is it only front loaded to push back the start of school?
I believe it's only front loaded to push back the start of school. However, what I would say is we take the contractual days and move them into different parts of the year. So we have built in 2 full PD days. I'm sorry, 3 full PD days. We just take those out of the beginning of the year and we move them into other. So let's take your suggestion of, we just talked about the possibility of saying, okay, Thanksgiving week, we don't have school, but we use that Monday as a professional development day for teachers to come in, work together, collaborate, and then the rest of the week, we open up the building for the custodians to do a thorough cleaning of the building. This gives parents a break, gets a chance for everybody to take a deep breath. So that, so we could manipulate our schedule that way a little bit. But what I read today was, it was designed for the start of school, and that's what the union's pushing for, a slow start into the year. My sense from our union, from our teachers, that at this point in time, they'd like to start right after Labor Day if possible.
And Kristen.
There we go. I got a question because I happened to be looking at more stuff released by DESE, and they were talking about, this kind of goes back to budget, they were talking about relief for the residential special ed programs. Does that impact us in any way?
It depends on what they mean, but I don't believe so. I don't see, I've never seen relief on that front.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I'll talk to Andrea though and ask her what they're talking to, but it's probably similar to the relief we're getting on our end on the public
Okay.
side.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Nate?
No additional questions. Thanks.
Super. So you're going to get a plan, the preliminary plan to the state, and then August 10, there's a plan due. So is that a plan that you anticipate we would, the committee would approve, or is that you put it forward?
We're asked to put it forward. I have not seen guidance from the state that it has to be approved by the school committee, because everything's moving so fast and school committees don't meet in the summer. So I do not believe there's a requirement that school committee approves that plan.
I want to balance and make sure that you're able to run, but that you don't have to take any back steps, right? So if you need it, we've got the time. If it's not needed, then we don't need to go into that space. Graduation requirements for the class in the high school, will we have to update that, or do you anticipate they'll still need the same credits?
Well, actually, in the block scheduling model, students will actually be able to take 1 extra course this year. So we shouldn't have any requirement issues for graduation.
Okay. And have you had discussions about testing, how you administer testings in the remote periods? I think last year as we finished up, there sort of wasn't any concern about applying tests.
School is going to be school next year. The curriculum is going to move forward, and testing will be administered. Are you just talking about regular? You talking about state testing, or just regular biology?
The biology exam. You're going to sort out whether you do that remote. If you're able to do that, or you're going to do it while they're in the building. How you work through with that?
I haven't got into the weeds on that yet with the different schools, but I would imagine that's a school by school decision. Right. But I would also think for reliability purposes, important tests, I would imagine, would be taken in school.
Yeah, I think you'll have to, as you say, by school, we'll have to sort that out. Can you get the proposed calendar out to us early, not the day of the meeting, just so that we can start to think of really crazy questions? Not tonight, but
Di and I started to work on that today, and we should have it out to you by the end of the week.
We'll go around one
Again,
more time.
just a proposal.
We're gonna go around one more time. Pete,
I'm good, thank you.
Bruce,
I don't want to contradict Ted, but on the high school call prior to this one, the question about graduation requirements was raised, and Ted McCarthy did make the comment that there may be the rare exception for something like civics or financial awareness, that some
Oh,
kid
yes.
not get that in, and that would be a one-off, but that would be that may necessitate us to modify the graduation requirement policy, because we may run into 1 or 2, maybe 3 kids that do not get all of that in.
That's correct.
so would want to try to do that at the beginning of the year rather than midway through the year if you can. See if we can sort out whether that's gonna.
Sure.
Kristen,
I'm good. Thank you.
and Nate.
No other questions. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Ted. That's I think sort of what people have been hungry for, at least on the committee, to get a sense of what's going on. We'll try to get the agenda out and the packet out as early as possible, with the assumption that where there are policy changes or things like the calendar, we will vote in the next meeting.
Could
Anything else? Yeah.
I'll get that calendar out to you, and if you can get me feedback, if there are suggestions that you have, and then we could mock up a couple of different drafts prior to that meeting.
Yeah, and certainly for any of the topics, as folks look through, I think that handout I spoke to, but it has a whole host of items that are typically policy driven. If you read through that and you think, I really want to make sure I have a conversation about that policy earlier rather than later to Ted and I, so that we know how much time. Next item on the agenda is new business agenda items, action items. Pete.
Nothing for me.
Bruce.
I have nothing.
Kristen.
Nothing.
Nate.
Nothing to add.
So we talked about possibly having a retreat. Ted and I did talk before the meeting. I won't say how long before the meeting, but we do think things are sort of dynamic enough, and we're meeting. Want to do this, but right now the inclination is maybe get a couple of weeks, even a month of the year running through, and then convene. We'll have learned how to meet. So that's sort of where I'm headed. If you have real agita over that, we'll come back and revisit. But right now we're thinking in that space. Kristen.
Yeah, I do, because here's what we're doing. We're telling staff and students that it's okay to go back to school, but we as a group can't meet in person.
So I wasn't trying to do that. Two different questions. Although I think that's a fair question. We had talked about, we typically have an all day, we've done a retreat where it's not to vote, but to talk about significant topics, to sort of do some of the goal setting and the planning. And the feedback was, we still want to do that retreat. I don't necessarily care whether we do the retreat live or Zoom, so much as that when we do the retreat, I think it makes sense to get the administration as much time as they can to get ready for the school, and 2, to get a couple of weeks under our belts to learn what's going on. But then meeting in person, I know Nate had asked for that also, and I'm good with that.
Yeah, I just, sorry, Peter, I just feel really disjointed with these Zoom meetings. I'm one of the Brady bunch up here, and I don't like the interaction. So I'm just concerned about that, because if I don't like the interaction, I'm concerned about students, and I'd love to talk about that. I just feel out of the picture.
Got it.
And so I'm not comfortable with that.
Not comfortable with having a retreat via Zoom meeting. Understood.
Well, yeah, but also just moving forward, I find this a very difficult way to interact. This isn't me. So it just becomes a little bit of a challenge. And I like the in-person better. I feel a bit canned and staged when I do this way. And I'm just concerned that I might be not doing something for the sake of being on camera like this. Not that I'm afraid to be on camera in general, but that's just how I'm feeling.
For sure.
So,
Okay.
I know everybody else is looking at me going, huh? But
I think
but
I think we're all going
important.
through these, and it's difficult.
Right. And
the
so it's
sooner we could
difficult
have a
for
live
us.
meeting, the happier we would be. I just want to make sure that what I was bringing up was the retreat, and it's sort of
Blossomed into everything else. But I think it's important as we go forward, because we're asking parents to let their kids come hang out with a whole bunch of other people for a certain number of hours every day. And if
Great.
we're not able to do it, why are they going to feel comfortable doing it? So I think we need to role model what we're expecting to have
Got
happen.
got
That's
it.
where I'm going.
Pete.
I only wanted to say that, I think we already all discussed that no one has a problem with meeting in person. It's gonna happen eventually, but it does make sense to maybe wait until we have a little bit more information, see how the school year is going. Maybe we do our summer retreat a week or two into the new school year, and there's going to be a lot to discuss at that point too.
Maybe try to tag around Columbus Day weekend in that area.
Yeah.
We had a discussion in a prior meeting about esports, and I don't know whether that was settled or that's still an open topic we need to put on an agenda.
That's on our next agenda.
Okay, great. Lunch balances, again, I'm afraid I just had it on my list, so I'm not sure.
We're going to address that. We have that covered. We want to be very thoughtful about lunch balances. We want to be careful that with averaging over 4,000 meals being distributed by our school district on a weekly basis, we don't want to be calling families to find out that someone's lost their job and they're having financial troubles. We'll be thoughtful about that. And then, as I said, there is a generous benefactor in town, and families that are having difficulties will pick up the tab for lunches. Speaking of lunches, there's also talk that what may happen is the federal government may choose to do what they did with urban school districts. Currently, if you have over 40% of your students on free and reduced lunch, everyone gets free and reduced lunch. So there's a initiative out there on the federal level to potentially to make things simplified, to just authorize everyone to receive free and reduced lunch next year. So I'll keep you posted if that does actually materialize.
If you do have something on the budget that you think we really shouldn't be spending that and you want to freeze it, can you bring that to the next, don't bring it to the meeting, bring it to Ted prior to the meeting. But you should give some thought to, if you think come October or November, there's something in the build schedule and Ted spent to the budget, or the administration spent to the budget, and that will be you'll have some question. Let's get in front of it. Right now he's got a budget, but I just wanted to make sure folks know that he's working in that budget. And if you think there's a line that we should be freezing or turning down, we should bring that up. And then the last one is no Zoom bombs so far. There's been lots of discussions about host. Right now, there are 4 hosts in the meeting. Christine, Di, Nancy, and myself, and all 4 are doing other things. I'm watching the participant list. It's not too terrible, but to be ready to have to mute somebody or pull somebody out. I did talk to Nate, and I think what we'll do is, unless again somebody's really feeling left out, what I'll do is bring Nate in so that Nancy and Di can focus really on supporting us with questions, and then Nate and I will watch if people want to enter the meeting. I think what I will do also is ask that they enter with their full name, just as a sort of a starter. I have to admit I don't know the names, so that makes it a little bit. But there'd be a couple of us who could admit people throughout the meeting. It's a pretty easy click. I've done it a couple of times now, and would be ready to one, turn the camera off if it was on. It shouldn't be on, and then mute. Did I cause any more? So the next item on the agenda is an adjournment for executive session to discuss contract negotiations with the STA. What we'll do is we'll have that vote, and my understanding is we'll actually end this meeting and start a separate meeting, which Di, can you give me some guidance? Is that a different meeting that you're going to send out?
Yes, yep, as soon as we close out, I'll send an invite.
Excellent. So it will take us a few minutes, but then we'll start up. So I'd look for a motion.
I move to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with the Sutton Teachers Association and not reconvene in open session.
Is there a second?
Kristen said second.
And Kristen said second. So Pete,
Tough side.
Bruce,
Edwards, aye.
Kristen,
Clark, aye.
Nate,
Jerome, aye.
Brennan, and I carries 5-0. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.